as a state administrator, I find a lot of value in bringing together all of the state agencies that touch domestic violence in any way. In our conversations, as we're trying to figure out how we can each respond differently to benefit victims, we're able to begin to address problems that other people aren't necessarily looking at, because we're looking at issues that cross over the responsibilities of numerous organizations.
Partnerships with other state agencies and programs are absolutely critical to your effectiveness as a state administrator. We try to do that, and I try to do that by doing as much outreach as possible. We have regular meetings on a quarterly basis, in fact, with all the other agencies and offices that fund domestic violence shelters. That's actually something that we initiated in our office, where we contacted the others and said, hey, let's make sure we're really maximizing the dollars, that we're on the same page with one another, that if we have training money, for instance, that we can coordinate and collaborate on how to best utilize those dollars. So we meet with them on a quarterly basis. We also in our office administer a lot of different funds, including the FIPSA funds, and that really makes it also critically important to bring other stakeholders to the table. And again, we have quarterly meetings with those groups to really look at who's doing what, are we on the same page. It doesn't help to be training judges about domestic violence with one philosophy, using a completely different one with police or prosecutors. You have to really look at a coordinated approach. And so we see it as our responsibility, and I certainly see it as my responsibility as a state administrator to make sure that those kinds of conversations and interactions are happening, and therefore I'm the one who implements a lot of them.
One of the things that we established in North Carolina a few years ago is our improvement plan. And part of that, we've actually included a domestic violence external dialogue. With this external dialogue, we come to the table physically again once every other month with our other state partners, such as the Coalition Against Sexual Assault. And we actually sit down with them and talk again about better ways that we can keep families and victims safe.
You've got to be sitting at the table with the other agencies in your state that have domestic violence service funding. One of the biggest mistakes that get made, and it happens in most places, is that people really stay focused and they put on blinders to what's happening outside of their own agencies and or their own scope of services. When that happens, we don't really create great systems for survivors, and often that's when services get siloed. So my suggestion to FIPSA administrators is find out who those players are. Find out where the federal money is that comes into your state. Find out which state agencies get money for domestic violence services. The folks who know that best are your statewide coalitions. Sit down with them and ask them who are the important players, and really begin to engage in the conversations about what does the larger picture look like, so that you're not duplicating services, but you're really adding to a system that addresses gaps in services and provides a better continuum of care.
For every state administrator, it's so important to have a strong relationship with the State Domestic Violence Coalition in their state in order to do their job, to reach the programs in the state. They need to work in partnership with the state coalition when it comes to planning for the services that are needed, to implement the grant program, to monitor the services. State coalitions have as their key role to coordinate and provide technical assistance to programs around the state, and generally have a very strong relationship with all those programs. So for the state administrator to do their job, they really need to work hand in hand with state domestic violence coalitions.
That the reality is you can only be as strong as a state in the work that you do in domestic violence as your state coalition. So our board, our governor-appointed board, and our office in state government are incredibly dedicated to maintaining and always having a strong relationship with our coalition, because they're truly the people who are working with those who are in the trenches. Their vantage point is absolutely critical, and we don't think that we can be good or effective at what we do if we don't have a strong relationship with them and help them maintain their own organizational strength.
In terms of building a strong partnership with the Domestic Violence Coalition, it was really easy because I would have to say it had been largely built by my predecessor. So I was able to pretty much pick up where the previous manager had left off. I think another thing that was helpful was that the coalition was very open to a strong partnership.
Well, we're very fortunate to have a wonderful state administrator who has made a conscious effort to reach out to us, to communicate with us, to be honest in communication about what's going on, what the needs are, how we can work together, how we can help each other, and that has created a phenomenal relationship that has a positive impact throughout the state.
The way that we built our strong partnership with the State Domestic Violence Coalition was really being able to come to the table and acknowledge that we have very different roles. The role of the coalition is really around advocacy and social change. The role of administrators is really around funding and program issues, although there are overlaps in that work. And I think what we came to some agreements on was that although we're state administrators and we work in the government and have some limitations about not being able to lobby and those kinds of things, we also were in this work for the same reasons. And so being able to both acknowledge each other's differences in our roles and finding common ground moving forward has really strengthened our collaboration.
We were able as a division to build a strong partnership with the North Carolina Coalition Against Domestic Violence by initiating communications with them concerning our grants process. We actually used some of the staff from the coalition when we began our process a few years ago to actually be some of the readers and to participate in the scoring process.
In New Jersey, there is a long history of collaboration with the State Domestic Violence Coalition going back as far as 1985. When we have that kind of collaboration and, you know, a mutually respectful relationship at the state level, you can't expect people to be doing that at the local level if you're not, you know, kind of modeling that collaboration at the state level.
Yeah, I would add that it's important that the relationship is modeled as one of mutual respect and partnership, and you can't use that word enough, rather than an adversarial relationship. Even if something is not quite what people understand, that we approach the situation in talking to our administrator that we're here to work it out and come out with the best solution, so that, and ultimately we are reaching those that we're trying to serve in the best possible way.
We're contracted by HHSC to maintain a level of expertise so that we're that resource for the direct service providers. But we're also working on a proactive way. When we identify that maybe 2 or 3 visits have demonstrated a current trend, perhaps programs aren't quite understanding the requirement that's expected of them, it'll give us the impetus to say, okay, let's develop this kind of curriculum or this kind of training so that we react in a proactive manner.
It's essential that the coalition work closely with the state administrator so that we can provide that input and hopefully guidance on the best way that those funds can be used to serve victims across the state throughout our local programs, and so that also we're aware of funding issues going on so that we can provide technical assistance to our member programs.
In our state, the Texas Health and Human Services Commission funds the majority of the programs in that state. We are able to be the conduit by which we're able to convey to the programs, this is what it requires for you to be a good provider to the state of Texas.
An example of a collaboration that we have in North Carolina is that we've started having monthly discussions with all of the major funders of domestic violence and sexual assault programs, and we call that our round table. And so that's a great way for each of our agencies to share information about what's going on with local programs, who might be struggling, how can we support them to make any changes they need to make before anything gets to a crisis situation, and that has worked really well. Another example of a collaboration that we have with our state FIPSA administrator is she is a member of our state steering committee of our Delta project, and that is our domestic violence prevention plan for North Carolina, and that has been a wonderful collaboration to have that input and support in working on that 10-year plan.
We may not always be in complete agreement, but we've established it's okay to disagree. But that they recognize we're going to come in and have a perspective, and they're going to listen to us, and we will hear their perspective and try to find that common ground.
An effective means of building a relationship with our sub-grantees has been not just the collaboration part, but it has also been filtering information down to them. We found that providers are very grateful when they have resources, when they have materials that they can actually use to better support them in the work that they do every day. The nature of what we do is severe. It's sometimes a matter of life and death. So it's really good when they feel supported as far as having resources and materials. And even when we come to federal meetings and we're able to bring back information and say, here's some other things to make your day a little bit easier.
An effective means of building relationships with some grantees is pretty much listening to what their needs are, assisting with anything that you can do to help them, whether it's with funding, technical assistance, whatever it is that their needs are. If you can assist them in some kind of way, that bond that you share with those individuals is what you actually can count on.
Effective ways for building relationships with subgrantees when distance is involved, as in Alaska, includes teleconferencing whenever possible, interacting through email, giving calls, and then if you have the opportunity to be in the community, stopping by and getting to know the program and the face of the people that are there.
In addition to Gloria and I talking, we tend to talk over the phone just because we never seem to have time to meet, but there are also set monthly meetings with some of Gloria's staff, people that lead the training or lead the work with the more direct work with the centers. And so if they begin to get calls from center directors who are confused or unclear on things, they'll bring that to the meeting and get clarification so that everybody has an understanding. They can respond to those calls better.
As we said about communication, we really make it very clear that we're all partnering together so that we can come out with the best solution around issues that come up.
And it's being open and flexible. Things don't always go according to plan. When you come to the stage of a program starting up, conditions may have changed. You may not have been aware of a particular circumstance, and you just have to be very flexible and negotiate and be able to respond to changes pretty quickly. The fact that the coalition and the FIPSA administrator work so closely together makes it much easier and paves the way for us to work across other systems. For example, we're doing a major project addressing co-occurrence of domestic violence and child abuse, which has involved developing a domestic violence case practice protocol together, and also having a domestic violence advocate in every child protection office.
I think one of the first things that a new administrator could do in terms of building partnerships with other agencies and programs is actually leverage the relationship with the coalition, because if the individuals at the coalition have been there for any length of time, they have a lot of those partnerships and relationships, and so they can be an introduction to who the new state administrator should contact, and maybe could even facilitate the introduction.